So, welcome to the 90th annual town meeting. And the second hybrid town meeting. We have 17, 18, about 20 connections. I'm not sure how many people that represents. All right, so before this slide, we're going to have an invocation by our very own Joe Clark. So, Joe, you're welcome to come up here, speak more or less into this microphone.
Thank you, John. Gracious God, we give you thanks for the care given to this community by those who volunteer their time and their wisdom, and for the leadership of our elected officials and staff. Help us to be slow to criticize and quick to appreciate. We give thanks for the sounds that bring joy to this community. The children in the summer in the parks, barred owls calling us to supper in the evening hours, and the laughter floating in the summer air. We live in abundance. Remind us of our neighbors who are marginalized, and those who clean our houses and mow our grass, pick up our trash and care for the sick. We are fortunate indeed. Make our hearts soft enough to keep breaking, and our anger turned towards justice, not cruelty. Bless this gathering today. Bless our families, our children, and our grandchildren. And that this year, may we remember those who have died this past year: Ann Briggs, Betty Knight, Charlie Nagin, and Ann Shiflett. Joan Mahaffey. I'm sorry? Okay. May their lives remind each of us of the preciousness of every one of us. Keep us fiercely kind. Amen.
Thanks, Joe. Okay, so here we are in McCatherine Hall, fortunately, which up until 1 week ago, was still in disarray due to the emergency sprinkler repair. I hope you can all admire how well it was put back together. It doesn't look like any such project was conducted. The floors were cleaned, new fans, and I'll mention this again in a minute, and you're going to hear from Chris Grisham about the scale of the project and some other things that the hall has coming up this year. All right, so now let me, conduct of the meeting. We've done this now, virtual meetings, which we did during the pandemic. So we have to have a 50 voting residents. We do. There's at least 20 who are virtual. So with us, we're well over the 50 voting resident requirement. The rules of the meeting are Robert's Rules of Order. Dennis Kirschbaum has graciously agreed to be the parliamentarian who we can ask to resolve any questions concerning procedure. Dennis is not present; he's virtual, but he will be available. And lastly, the voting procedure, which with virtual attendance and voters gets a bit complex. We'll review those when we get to a vote. hopefully the votes won't be controversial or close, in which case it's rather straightforward. So let's see if this will. All right. Here you stand and wait to be recognized. In Zoom, you raise your hand if you want to speak, or make a verbal request by putting your audio on, hopefully not interrupting. And you can use chat to text questions to me or other co-hosts. So the actual first item on the agenda is to approve the agenda. And hopefully you all have seen it. I don't have it in my slides, but I need a motion to approve the agenda. Thank you, Peter. See a few seconds. Any questions, comments on the agenda? If not, all in favor? Okay. I think we'll take that as a go ahead. All right. Having done that, I'm showing town employees, but on the agenda, the next item will be approve the minutes from last year's town meeting. Those were available for you to read, which Kathy put together. I do have to let you know there is a correction in the stormwater management projects section. In the design build RFP that was done, the contract was awarded to SMI Environmental, not to Soltes, and the two springs that Patty talked about would be restored in the future, would not be part of the stormwater management project itself. So with those corrections, any other comments? Minutes? All right, we'll move to a vote. All in favor of approving last year's minutes, please raise your hand or having. Okay, great. The town meeting, I always, and I hope the town agrees, the top order of business is to recognize everybody who has worked hard or contributed to the past year of the town's business, accomplishments, et cetera. Top of the list is our actual employees, which are all of two. Town Clerk Kathy Lehman, more about her a little later, and Treasurer Jean Moyer. Thank you. So I'll just say a little bit about Jean. Jean really has taken on a role beyond being treasurer. She's been our personal manager, our HR, if you will, department. I'm sure you all know we hire, especially in the summer, a lot of seasonal employees, part-time employees, and all of that involves a lot of paperwork, no matter how electronic the system is. And Jean has introduced a good payroll system, so she's made that work. She handles insurance and everything else. So she's really indispensable, and I think has been doing a superlative job as town treasurer. All right. Okay, so we do have others who we, of course, engage to various activities. They're kind of on contracts. Pat Petula has been the town archivist now for many years. And Marilyn Fry is our records management officer and IT support, which has been particularly helpful with the technical aspects of the office, moving the office again. So thanks to both of them. Okay, I want to be sure and mention Christine Dibble, our now retired webmaster, bulletin publisher, And, Christine's contributions to communication over the last few years involving the website and the bulletin have been fantastic. She upgraded and improved the look of the website, and among other things. And I think not having her has caused us to have to work pretty hard to replace her, which we are doing with probably 2 or 3, 4 people. All righty. Well, yes, and here's one of them. Arlene McLaren, this is kind of forward thanking, although she's been doing it now she did it a few months, and now she's doing it regularly, publishing the bulletin. That's the bulletin formatted so that when you get it in your email, you can read it conveniently, whether you're looking at the small screen or the big screen or whatever screen. So she's also assembling the bulletin, because in the process of doing all that formatting, it's most efficient for her also to put the articles in order and such. So thank you, Arlene, for doing that. All right. Every year, the silent work of John Klinger gets mentioned. Our fiduciary responsibility to make sure that financial transactions are reviewed and are correct falls on John monthly, who takes a look at transactions, the bank account, etc., and signs off or questions how financial transactions were handled. So thank you, John. All right, and then we come to the cause of all of the progress and maybe some of the problems here in the Grove. The town council, who I have to say has been very productive for the last few years, especially this last year. These people, Rob, Chris, Peter, John Porter, and Barbara and Mary have stepped up. They do a terrific amount of work outside of the meetings in order to prepare for the meetings and in order to help accomplish a lot of the business of the town. So not paid, but committed, and that's the way this town has worked. And hopefully there may be people here, I know there's at least one, who are willing to try their hand at being town councilor, at least for 3 years in the future. All right, the Planning Commission, as you know, is an appointed body. Georgette has been the chair for 5 years. She's not here to quarrel with me, but something like that. She's downstairs. Peter is the council's representative for this past year. Sylvie Favre, Robert Johnson, Bob Kristen, and for this last year, Bill Earl functioned as alternate until recently, but going forward, he's a full member. Sylvia stepped off, and we are hopefully going to appoint a new alternate at the council meeting on the 18th. Thank you. Board of Supervisors of Elections, who are busy counting the votes downstairs. Nick Suzik's chair, Mary Blake, and Margot Kavanaugh. So thank you for that. The Historic Preservation Commission, also appointed. Bob Boer has been the one and only chairman since its inception. So that makes him, historic in his own right, more historic than me, by the way. I had a gap. And then the commissioners are Wendy Harris, Bill Earl, Mimi Stiles, and David Stopak, with Kirk Greenway serving as the alternate. The Board of Zoning Appeals, which some of you may never even have heard of, since they haven't had an occasion. There has not been an appeal to the Board of Zoning Appeals in quite a few years. But Sad Amagai is the chair. Jane Suzanne has agreed to serve, and it needs to be 3 individuals. I don't have a full-time name to put up there, although somebody, was it you, Rob? Somebody volunteered in case we did have an appeal to step up into that role. Anyway, there you go. He's getting off the council, so got to keep him in the game. All right. We have a few other appointed committees. As you know, the vast majority of the work that gets done in Washington Grove is done by our voluntary committees that are not directly managed by the town, by me, by the council, but follow guidelines that the council has set up, and otherwise utilize volunteers who put their time and effort into the various tasks that need to get done, for which many municipalities have staff, and Washington Grove doesn't. So I skipped through the shared use pathway. Is monitoring the shared use paths now that are going to be connected to the town. The Washington Grove connector from Crabs Ranch Way being the one we've sought for decades. More about that later. Their members are Jay Everhart, Bob Boer, Margaret Kavanaugh, Donna Schreiner, and Barbara Romano. And believe me, they're not just a bunch of names. They have been on top of the planning that's going on by the Department of Transportation, county's Department of Transportation. And dare I use the word, well, I'll use the word encouraged them to communicate with the town about all aspects of this planning. The word I was going to say is hound them, but actually Gene Kapusnik, who's leading that project, has been extremely cooperative and forthcoming in interactions with the town. All right, new this year, as you know, is the Playground Committee. This is a committee that differs from our other committees in that the town council chartered the committee in December to, of course, manage the modernization and renovation build out of the playground, to realize the vision of the playground comprehensive plan, which we adopted this year as well, this fiscal year. And many of them were responsible for drafting that plan. Some of them were for drafting that plan. That's Jonathan Dale's brother, Jonathan. I don't know how that happens. If that's the only typo, it's a miracle. All right, so you see who they are: Oscar Ramos, Jonathan Dale, Andrew Balin, Meredith Haran, Arlene McCrean. Jane Klinger was originally on the committee, has since stepped off, and Laurel Goldberg now serves, and Peggy Boer And Nick Petrone, if Nick wins his election today, he'll be stepping off of that because the town council has to make decisions about the playground committee. So we'll be looking for another appointed member of the playground committee. The playground committee, to my mind, and in the charge to them, needs to recruit all of us, any other volunteers with whatever expertise or interest to accomplish this if you will, a facilities construction project. And having been involved in the stormwater management project, which I will talk more about later, it can be quite an effort to go from an idea to an actual realized facility. And so more than these 8 individuals should be contributing to the playground build-out. All right. Then we have all the other committees and the volunteers, of which I only list the chairs, and they all have more or less other resident members. So there's the dog park. Liz Gillanders is the chair. Forestry and beautification joint chaired by Georgette and Audrey. The Gateway Committee by Joe Houghton's brother Jonathan. The Lighting Committee, Virginia Casada. Maple Lake was Tom Land, and those reins have been picked up by Stephen Hansen. He's back here, thank you. And here we go. On to the Meadows Committee, chaired by Bruce Agee. The Recreation Committee, joint chaired by Lisa and Christina. The Sustainability Committee, Bob Boer, wearing another hat, chairs that committee. The Woods Committee, Patty Klein, of course, longtime, I will say, activist concerning the town's woods. We're grateful to have someone who puts as much energy in, as well as the committee, of course, and other individuals. And then we have, yes, we have and we don't have the Emergency Preparedness and Safety Committee, which might be getting back into existence. But in the absence of an actual committee, Chris Gresham is the counselor with responsibility for safety, emergency preparedness and safety. He would be the liaison. As it is, he is the committee for now. So Chris, fantastic that you're to do that. Yeah. Thanks to everybody. That goes to all the chairs and everyone who spends so much time on the town. Want to just call out Peter Nagrod, the town councilor, who serves as maintenance coordinator, which means he took the job on for 2 reasons, as far as I'm aware. One is he used to and still does wander throughout the Grove pretty regularly. So he gets a firsthand view of everything that has been done, needs to be done, or was done wrong. And the other thing is he just wants to get it done right. So he offered to do this. So this is a fairly time-consuming, in spite of the fact that we have terrific contractors who do who virtually do all the work. Managing the number of tasks that need to be done is still a formidable time commitment. Peter, thank you. Right. And there's the landscape maintenance team. I want to call them out since, and I'll mention them again, but They do a terrific job, most of us believe. So, all right, now I get to move on to what I usually do is kind of review the past year's business accomplishments, and then I'll go on and talk about what's coming up. So all of you know what's on the radar. Aha. Okay, well, I guess Kathy needs no introduction. She wouldn't want to be introduced anyway, but, after 24 years, we have to say something, maybe a lot. And I threw a few things in here just to put this in perspective. So she started in 2002, which, I was mayor. And she followed Mary Charlstrom, who had been in the clerk's position for, 20 plus years at least. So we've had now 2 town clerks in about 45 years. That's served us incredibly well. And we're hoping to, we would like to find someone, but we'll get into that later as well. All right, a little summary. Over 300 town council meetings, to my calculation. About 275 town bulletins, which she was responsible for assembling and distributing. Over a zillion, that's an approximation, resident questions and a few resident complaints. Sorry for the yellow, it didn't work. About 35 town councilors she's had to interact with. Only 4 mayors, though. That's the good news. The bad news is that 15 of those were me. So, I don't believe I was responsible for driving her to early retirement, if we call this early. The technology, all right. Anyway, Kathy, thanks so much for all your years. You're going to get, this is the same you're going to get, I've used for about 5 years for Volunteers of the Year, a framed picture of the page of Washington Grove from 157 cities that Maryland has. So you're going to get one of those when we, that is you and me, finally take care of the backlog. And I didn't know what else to do. So token, it says Happy New Year. It's Happy New Year starting July 1st. When you're no longer clerk, it's a new year for you as well as for us. This is not wine because she doesn't. Yeah, see, we got that message right. It's beer. It's my beer.
It's your beer?
It's homebrew, disguised as a wine bottle.
I can change it. Thank you.
Yeah, that as I usually show this, that's the book, Maryland's 157 Cities and Towns, and that's our page. That book was, I forgot when it was published, so the book may be out of date, but we've been around for 150 years, 151 years, 2 years, so our page is probably still pretty accurate in there. Let's move on then to highlights from the past year as threatened earlier. First off is mitigation of the stormwater damage in the West Woods. This is not the swim project that we're engaged in, and that's about to start construction. This is the actual damage that has been caused by the increase in water in the West Woods. Anybody who's been down there knows that that gully, whatever you want to call it, has enlarged. Trees are falling. We've had to move the lake fence, and we need to do something about it. We were fortunate to have a project with the Montgomery County Green Bank, and a contractor produced for us the West Woods study, which presented several engineering solutions to control further damage in the West Woods. And the point of that is that in order to fund a project to do that, and they estimated the costs depending on options, and it's in the million or several $1 million range, out of the town's reach at this point, I think. We need to find some funds. So anyway, we got that study, and we have that now to move forward. The Renewable Energy Conversion Incentive Program was continued with diminishing applications. So anybody who, we're going to have a proposal to renew it again, or continue it, with a few modifications for the coming year. The Meadow Restoration Plan, this was a huge deal last year. It continued with the next phase of additional cedars being removed in order to restore the viewscapes and the meadow character of the property. Washington Connector Shared Use Pathway, mentioned the committee. Well, most of the approvals for this project are now in hand, and the project's funded, and the engineering plans are nearing 100%. We are at the point of having to grant them an easement to do work at the end of Brown Street on the town part of this last little bit of this. Contracts bid and awarded. We had one. The landscape maintenance contract was re-bid. RJ Landscapers, again, was awarded the contract. This time, we put in a provision that it could be renewed for 5 years with mutual agreement between the contractor and us. So with any luck, we won't have to rebid that for 5 years. We'll see. Now here's the stormwater infrastructure maintenance project. The last year has seen a lot of work between the town and our contractor, who we awarded the contract to at the end of 2024. And we have now agreed on the 100% engineering design and the final cost. This, as you know, well, I won't read it, but what the intent of the project is there. The McCatherine Hall sprinkler system has been replaced, and in the process, a few other improvements were also done. I'll leave it to Chris to go into any details there. Okay, believe it or not, at the beginning of this last year, the new zoning for the commercial corner was adopted, with the point being to enable or encourage the property owner to renovate the property in return for an expanded set, without specifying them, of uses on the property to make it more economically, as an economic incentive to improve the property. The playground comprehensive plan I mentioned earlier, this presents a vision for renovating and modernizing the playground. It was developed with the playground work group within the rec committee. This was a resident-driven project to basically to improve the usable use and of the playground facilities for kids and youths and residents of all ages. Then, as part of that plan, the Playground Committee, or as a follow-on, the Playground Committee was chartered by the council, and you can imagine what their responsibility is. They were, the reason this was an appointed committee was because there needs to be some close coordination between the resident proposals and the funding and implementation of those proposals, since we're doing a significant renovation of one of the town's facilities. Then, just recently, with the support of our state senator Nancy King and our state delegates as well in the House of Delegates, we were awarded $250,000 for renovating our playground. So, yeah, that is a big deal because we had a plan that this project would extend over multiple years, figuring the town could commit $30,000 or $40,000 a year. So that was going to be a multi-year project. May still be a multi-year project, but an awful lot will likely be accomplished here in the next year or two with this fund. All right. Last from the past year is Kathy announced she was retiring, and therefore we needed to find a new town clerk. A group of consisting of myself, Treasurer Jean Moyer, Councilors Peter Nagrod, Barbara Ramondo, and Mary Warfield, created a job description for the job moving forward. Keep in mind, the last job description was written in 2002, so completely obsolete. Well, not completely obsolete, but to a large extent needed to be upgraded. So we did that, as you know, and have advertised, and did get a pretty significant response, as you might have guessed, because of all the turmoil at the federal government employees. But we also had some interest from residents in town. So we are at the point of, well, I'll get on to that with the coming year's activities. So applicants have been interviewed. Oh, and I do want to go back and point out, so what were the things that we felt were important responsibilities for the incoming town administrator, and it's the reason we changed the name to administrator. One is we would like to offload a fair amount of contract management. We need new systems to bring the town into the modern electronic world where documents are organized, can be available to anyone given permission for those documents electronically. So get off of paper and get into the cloud. And just to mention one of the numerous other things that would make operations here in the town much more efficient. One is an electronic resident request tracking system. So if one of you calls up and says, you know, there's a signpost has fallen, or, you know, we need a tree removed, it could be entered in, whoever's responsible would consider it, make some sort of decision, that would be entered in, and you could actually track the progress of those requests, and maybe, just maybe, fewer or no requests would go into a black hole. So at least we'll know if they do, why did they not get done. All right, there's other things. So applicants are, All right, let's move on to looking ahead. Start with this swim project, which has been going on a while. We got the funds from the pandemic recovery funds, and we're decided to use them, over $450,000 for this sort of a project, which we would not otherwise have found an easy time to fund. Well, construction is expected to begin this month and be completed by October. What won't be completed is all the landscaping, which we have left in the town's hands to make the decision what to put in. We'll probably hire somebody to put it in, but that will follow on once all of the earth moving and construction has been done. Town ownership of our streetlights. You may have heard this mentioned a number of times. This idea started quite a while ago. Charlie Charlstrom, fantasized about it, considering our issues with Pepco. And the lighting committee was formed by interested residents, chaired by Virginia. And they have been working, on the difficult job of getting the process for municipal ownership approved by the Public Service Commission and Pepco, who have dragged their feet I think it's decades, once they were mandated to make possible for municipalities by the Public Service Commission of Maryland to buy their own streetlights. Now, so we are with final agreement in hand, maybe next week. It may not be everything we wanted, but it may be enough to finally come to the town and decide, will we be well served by buying our streetlights? So that is likely to come to the council, I think, in the coming year. Yeah. The new town administrator. So getting back now, looking forward, we're going to hire the best applicant in our estimation. We're planning to provide mentoring in what we're calling the traditional town clerk responsibilities, which are, the most important, the usual things, the face of the town in the office, answering questions, handling complaints, and all the other things that go with opening the hall, renting the hall, everything that Kathy has been doing. I mean, a large part of what Kathy has been doing. Then we're going to hopefully provide some mentoring in the expanded responsibilities we're imposing on the new town administrator. The same group that's hiring has agreed to provide oversight and the best option of success for whoever we hire in those activities. Lastly, supervise modernizing the town's administration's systems. I went through a few of those, so we'll have to make some decisions and prioritize what can be done there. Okay, recreational facility renovations coming up. We've got the playground site planning and new installations, which will be at the forefront. We want to repave the basketball court, which has got cracks and heaves and dire need of a resurface, and the hard tennis court repair or replacement. For a number of years, cracks have been appearing in the hard tennis court, and a few of those became quite significant this year. Okay, I had some pictures, but anybody can walk out there and see what we're talking about. So the council and the town is going to be faced. You're going to be looking at the budget. I'll get again, we'll go through that, of course. There's a lot of money in there for the tennis court repair or replacement. Website management. Well, as I said, we lost Christine. We have, Arlene has stepped in to do the bulletin publishing, but Arlene also has stepped up to be a project manager for any improvements on the website, new features. One of the things Christine did very efficiently, because she's a town resident, she put all of the new content, when something new happened, it appeared on the website. When new minutes, all that stuff. Well, without her, somebody has to do that. We're contracting to do that. And we have a developer to work with the under the hood and improve the site. So Marlene's going to project manage these activities, some of which are listed here, that have been discussed as being desirable for the website. One thing that's not here, I want to go back. One thing that was not there, the federal government has mandated that the government websites become accessible to all sorts of people with disabilities. They had a deadline for that of this year. It was this April for large municipalities and entities, and small ones like us, it was next year. Well, they've just backed that off a year. But we need to make those improvements. It's things like if you can't read, you can. If you are difficulty reading, you can voice a whole raft of things that can be done on a website. It just takes doing and money. So it's in the budget for this coming year. McCatherine Hall maintenance. I don't need to say anything here. I'll let Chris pick that up. Okay, now let's go back. I started out with compliments, which was that Westwood site, so we're coming back to that. So we need to now move forward on that. And so that's going to take a team to decide how we can raise funds, find funds, be granted funds for this project, and move ahead with the project. We have initial engineering concept, so we would need to know what that's really going to cost and what somebody wants to accomplish it. The Renewable Energy Conversion Incentive Program, is coming up for renewal. It will happen probably at the June council meeting. The Washington Grove Connector Path construction is expected to begin this year. We'll see, but it's imminent anyway. And that's terrific news for everyone who rides bikes or maybe wants to walk to the Giant in the Grove. Okay, so that's pretty much, I think the next thing is, yeah, so I'm going to move on to the next item. As always, there are a bunch of people who have there's a lot of people who put a lot of work and have for years into the town, and it's it's difficult to single anyone out for anything. This year it was a little bit difficult, but we with a little advice, I settled on the elephant basically in this room. Right, okay. Dane, Clark, and Steve Wirtz worked tirelessly, basically, since we awarded the contract to make it possible to get the sprinkler system, all the pipes replaced, and the hall back together in time for the spring rentals that we were lined up to use our gorgeous facility. And we, for a variety of reasons, not the least of which is it was going to be a lot of work, we paid them for this effort, got them under our insurance policy is one reason, even more so than volunteers are in general. But beyond just that, it was the timeline, and that required long hours. And so you can read it here. They went above and beyond. They carried out careful demolition. I use demolition in quotes because it was all going back to get it up to the ceiling here, through all the ceilings downstairs and all the pipes, and be able to put it back together quickly and nicely. On top of all of that, while they were at it, they did a few other improvements that seemed advisable or would be nice here in the hall. So all of those efforts are just beyond expectation. And, you know, much of it, if not all of it, is because they live here in town. And they love the town like we do, and they put their backs and skills where that is, as do we in different areas. So Dane and Steve, fantastic. I just want to prove they were working on it. So here they are, of course, working on the ceiling, which is where almost everything had to be moved. All right, so we don't have Dane. I should have made sure he was here. He probably wouldn't have shown up anyway. But Steve's here, so Steve. So in complete acknowledgement is Steve was the Volunteer of the Year winner last year. If I'd known we had this sprinkler project coming up, I probably would have waited. But no, that was because aside from this project here, there are 100 other things that Steve has volunteered to help out with and use his knowledge of the town and his skill at solutions. So that was last year, but this year it's this project in particular. So Steve, fantastic. I have here, and that's really what's in here. Says expensive red wine. So if it's not one you actually like, I have others. So this comes from my personal wine cellar. I actually have a lot of cheap red wine, but I have a lot of expensive. So you won't recognize that. But it's thank you. So Dane, I do not believe, is a big wine drinker, so I've got another bottle of my beer for Dane. Okay. Good. I can stop talking here now, I believe, and pass the, oh no, here it is. I put it somewhere. I did want to mention a special recognition here to a relatively new resident, Terry Armory, who turns out to be I guess, master carpenter. So he's been doing some carpentry-oriented projects, two of which are worth mentioning for this year. The bee houses, I think there were 15 or something, are around town now. And Ann's Folly restoration. Yeah, everybody know what Ann's Folly is? The tennis shed. So at Ann's remembrance, I kind of explained the origin of the tennis shed, which she did while she was, just before she retired as being mayor, and I took over after her. She got it because she's a tennis player. She got in her idea to, her head to, we needed a shed. I mean, we did need a shed for various equipment for maintaining the tennis courts. So that shed was created entirely with volunteers. We didn't buy any pre-made shed. Oh no, it was created by volunteers, and I had a picture of it. I am sorry, maybe I'll have it later. I can put it together while somebody else is speaking, of what it looked like when we dedicated it back in 1999. So it's now being restored. Again, it's a volunteer effort. Terry volunteered to do some of the woodwork and the decorative mishmashes, the cornice, whatever you call it, around it. It won't be the same. Those were all originally done by Jim Fletcher way back when, but they have all deteriorated and need to be refurbished or replaced with something appropriate. So I do have Terry's Ann's Folly sign to replace the sign. So hopefully this will last another, what is it, 18 years? No, 28 years. 28 years at least. It's got his name in the back. I also have the old one, which has Jim's name in the back. And then also a new frame for the plaque that says Ann's Folly on there. So he does nice work and preserves record. All right, I think finally I'm at the end of this. Yes, finally. All right, so next item on the agenda is I titled Keeping McCatherine Hall 125 Years Young. And yes, McCatherine Hall was built in 1901. So it's been 125 years for this building. Okay, Chris.
We had, if you remember back in November, we had an emergency budget session to try to move money from our reserves over to our current budget in order to support the removal and installation of a new fire suppression system. With that, we were able to write an RFP and get that approved through council and awarded to a contractor called Chesapeake Bay Fire Protection, or not Chesapeake Fire Protection. And that was in January 20th timeframe. But we had to wait pretty much throughout the entire month of February because of the cold in order to get our fire permit reviewed for approval. They wanted us to do what was called a flow test, which required, the first time around it was WSSC, and they hooked up some hoses on 2 different fire hydrants. They opened them up and they were trying to figure out what the water pressure was and the gallons per minute in our fire system, what we would be provided. Then after waiting 2 weeks, the permitting office denied our permit and said they wanted us to do one more flow test, which was local, down inside the pump room. So we had to come out quickly. Chesapeake came out and they ran another set of pipes directly out of our sprinkler system and did pretty much the same flow test. And right after that, within a week, we were able to get our fire permit approved, and work started in the hall. It was February, March. And preparation for all of this work, Steve and Dane. Steve came up with a strategy to go ahead and try to, that's the other thing too, we couldn't really do too much in the hall until the permit was approved. And then by doing the approval, then the ceilings started coming out. And why did we do that? We even had to cut holes throughout the sheetrock, going down the hallway into the new conference room, into the archive room, and that was to allow access for the contractors to be able to remove the existing pipe and to install new with new sprinkler heads. The contract that was awarded said that they would only do sprinkler system work and that they wouldn't do any structural work or electrical work. So that was the task that we had, was to be able to, and you know, again, Steve and Dane came up with a strategy to pull everything out that was restorable in a quick process. And then hopefully once we get some pictures, I'll show you how things were laid out. And in addition to restoring, it was an opportune time, and we took advice from Bob and the sustainability group, I guess, about insulating. So as we were putting this all back together, we did install, and the ceiling had no insulation whatsoever, and I think everybody knows that. And the insulation that we have right now, well, not right now, but prior to any of this, was in the floor, and that's where Steve had put some insulation in years ago. But as we removed, I guess about a third of the ceiling all the way around in order to access the pipes, as we were as they were reinstalling the ceiling, they were also putting R38 insulation into the ceilings. And we have enough insulation to do the rest of the hall, but because of time restraints, that's not going to happen until the weather gets cooler. And we'll be putting in the rest of the insulation. Also in the lower old conference room, the entire ceiling was torn out. It was partially because, well, primarily because the old ceiling that was there was the original ceiling, but because of the addition that was put in, there were parts of the wall over by the kitchen, all the way down, that was new, and so it just made it quicker to tear out the old ceilings and install with a ceiling of like kind, and you'll see pictures of that. And then we also reinstalled insulation that was removed from the old conference room area. And then going down the hallway, there were sections that were cut out that had to be, and also in the bathrooms. The way the system's laid out is we have the fire sprinkler system down below us, right? The pump room. And then the pipe comes straight up, and then you'll see right behind us, behind the screen, there's a walled-in section that goes straight up. Behind that is the main pipe that goes up and provides the water for all the sprinkler heads that you see all the way around. And then down in the old conference room, we have a pipe that goes through the conference room all the way straight through the bathrooms, all the way through into the main, the new council area and the archive room, and also the clerk's administrator's office. So, and again, all of that had to be removed. And then once it was all installed, we had to have it inspected before we could start putting anything back together. The initial inspection for the sprinkler system to say that the system was in enough for us to move forward with restoration work occurred April 13th. And then Steve and Dane went to work trying to put everything together. We thought that by patching all the holes and putting up all the ceiling, that we would have enough done for them to give us a final. When they came in, they looked at the sheetrock ceiling that had patches, and they asked us, what are you going to do with the ceiling? Are you going to paint it? And sure enough, we're going to paint it. So they said, final means final. So, they walked away, and we had frantically, Steve and Dane decided in 2 days' time to paint the entire hall and conference room and the hallway, the bathrooms, everything. And within 11 days, we're here where we are now. So this is really quick. You can see it's a stream of water. This is one of the bad leaks that we had. And then they did what was called a bubble test. You probably saw this back in November. So this is an indication of the type of leaks that we were having to deal with. Okay, so this is showing you what was in the pipes, the old original pipes. You could see what's called crud. You could see a little hole. Those are, and the corrosion. That's what we were dealing with. That's what this town was dealing with a system that was 30 years old, that was only designed to last, 10, 12, 15 years. So if you take a look, this is how the ceiling had to be removed. You could see the old fan that was there that we had before. And where you see Steve and Dane, it's right over here, there was a bird nest, I guess, an old one. So it's almost like a bale of hay come falling out of the ceiling. So this is where we were preparing the wood. After we laid it down on the floor, the nails had to be pulled, and Kathy was helping us here. And then Steve went through and numbered all of these boards, because like a puzzle, you had to be able to put it all back together again. And every single panel had to be numbered individually, right? And then every single board as it went back up again. So over here in the trailer are the old pipes that were pulled out, and those are the new staged pipes that were brought in. So if you take a look, you could see all the way around the edges, all 8 sides were removed. And that's one of our new fans that we were able to put in as this work was going on. So this is a quick picture. This is on the left, it's the old council room with the total ceiling removed and insulation removed, and you can see the pipes in the center. That's the ceiling that was removed through the restrooms, the men's and women's restrooms. And then all the way over on the right-hand side, that was a ceiling that was removed in the archive room in order for people to access, to remove the pipe and to put new pipe back in. And then also, if you note, the colors on the walls, right? The reason I bring that up is you'll see the last picture. So this is the pipe that I was talking about on the left-hand side. It's right behind us, and that's what actually feeds all the sprinkler heads up here. And in the center, that you could see through, I guess, the access place, that the hallway is down below us, right? I mean, not the hall, but the McCatherine Hall. And up above, that's above the ceilings right here where that big pipe is. And then over on the right-hand side is just to show you the upright sprinkler heads and the pendants that had to be put in. So this is where we are now. We stored all this ceiling in one of the storage pods that was right out here in front of the hall. All of that had to be brought back in and then rearranged. And that's what we were doing over on the left-hand side. In the center, you'll see, again, Steve and Dane on the scissor lift back here. And as we go around, putting the ceiling back up. And then paint. You see Dane going down the hallway, painting everything as we go because of the last 2 days, trying to get the final inspection. And so this is the after. You got, the hallway and the council room that's still being worked on. The archive room is still being worked on, but the walls are painted. You can see the ceilings are all back intact. The same with the old council room. The entire ceiling's back intact. The kitchen, that was all totally painted too. The ceilings are all back, and then the same with the bathrooms. This is what is now. And this is this hall restored. And I think this is our new system, the ECS system. And again, everybody probably already knows, but we, instead of going with the old oxygen system, which is designed, we have a dry system because of the winter months. You have to make sure that there isn't any water in the lines or to freeze in cold months. So we have what's called a dry system. And there's air in the system. And when the air bleeds off, then it opens up a flapper valve that's in the pump room and water floods the system. It has to pass a sprinkler test, which means water from this end of the building gets to the furthest end of the building in less than a minute. They tested that, and I think we were 40 some odd seconds. Anyway, the ECS is a nitrogen system. It used to be air. With nitrogen, it extracts the oxygen that's in the air that's in the piping system, and then it becomes inert pretty much. Then we won't have to worry about rust, corrosion, or bacteria, which is a degradation to the piping system. So the expected life, I've been looking online. They're telling us it could be 80 years plus with proper maintenance. And the type of maintenance, there's 3 little filter cartridges that are inside the ECS panel that need to be looked at. I think they sit on an annual basis. At least that's what the Chesapeake was telling me. When you read the brochures, they're telling you, I think it's like every 3 years. This is important for us that we're involved in restoring this place, right? We have to recognize that what's on the left is a dust mop. It's not for mopping up wet or food. And so what happens is whenever we have events here, people will grab whatever is available or the easiest, and a lot of times they'll just grab the dust mop. Then once it becomes dirty, it's no longer a dust mop, whereas, we do have mops, and that's, so in other words, if you're using the hall and you spill something, please, use the appropriate equipment, the wet mop, to mop up wet things and food. And then if it's dry like it is now, a dust mop is all we need to dust it off. I think that's it. If there's time, I'll take some questions. Oh, I was going to mention budget. How much was spent so far? Originally, the contract was for $86,000, and then there's been some mods that we've been working out with these guys. But long story short is, it looks like we've to date we're right around $90,650 with Chesapeake, and then. As part of this fiscal year also, and I don't know if we're going to, I guess we are, taking it out of the emergency funds. We had to do some emergency repairs this fiscal year, but last calendar year. And that amounted to right around $13,500. So all total so far, plus labor costs, we're looking at about $150,000 so far. And there's still work going on. questions? Well, thank you. Thank you for the support. This is good.
Okay, so, you know, Chris took you almost a blow-by-blow by pictures as to what all this involved. What he didn't say is that he has spent a large amount of time watching Steve and Dane do all the work. No, seriously, orchestrating, dealing with the contractor. You know, we had some leakages last summer. There was a lot more than he bargained for taking on responsibility of McCatherine Hall, which usually amounts to, you know, fix the light bulb, put a new light bulb in or something like that. So I want to be sure that he's recognized. I actually have a slide somewhere, but you need my presentation, but it doesn't matter. He definitely should be recognized for that effort. Absolutely. So, you know, you can't live on applause alone. So he's not paid, and none of us are paid, but in token of our appreciation, that's a gift certificate to a restaurant for you. And you better stay on call in case something.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, so next on the agenda is a report on our carbon footprint, and Paul Petrov from the Sustainability Committee will do this.
So I think all of y'all know, you know, as part of the Sustainability Committee, one of our key goals is to identify and quantify the different sources of carbon emissions in town and make sure these estimates are consistent with nationally recognized methods of doing this. But the main reason for doing this actually is that we really want to be able to provide actionable information to the town. You know, what are things that we can do as citizens to reduce our impact on the climate? You can go to the next slide. So back in 2021, we did our first audit of the town emissions. And one of the things we found was that they were quite large, about 6,000 tons of carbon dioxide per year. This is about 2,500% more than our forests actually sequester, just to give you kind of context. So despite all the forest land we've got, it's really not doing enough. And this pie chart, which we showed last time, kind of breaks down all of our different sources. And the key thing to see is that about you can go back. Yeah, about 2/3 of that is actually coming from our housing stock and our cars, in particular, our heating and cooling, the electricity load, and the vehicle emissions. So fast forward about a couple years, 2025, you can go to the next slide. We did a new audit for this year, and one of the things we found was that we reduced our emissions by about 800 tons of carbon dioxide per year. That's about 13% reduction over 4 years. This is the breakdown. You can still see that the housing stock, the heating, cooling, electricity, and the vehicle emissions still account for the lion's share of that. But this is a meaningful reduction, and this is really, well, if you go to the next slide, I'll show where this is coming from. So this is really due to things that folks have done in town. So about 1/3 of our houses are now using renewable electricity. This is one of the biggest wins that we've gotten. We've had 15 oil systems converted to heat pumps as of last check. This is a really big one. And another factor here is that Pepco and PJM, they appear to be using cleaner energy. I put a star, or I think of this with an asterisk, because this is using their reporting numbers. You know, we'd like to see them do a lot more, but it looks like they're doing something. If you go to the next slide. And just to kind of show you where a lot of this is coming from. So this reduce in our heating load, this is to a large extent from both the renewable electricity, but also the heat pump conversions. But we've really gotten some really huge wins with the cooling and the electricity. We've gotten almost a 50% reduction in our carbon footprint for these. And these were really big sources of emissions for the town. The vehicles, this is something we're still working on, but all of you that are buying electric vehicles, this is really helping a lot. It's a good thing. One of the big differences here, this was during the pandemic, whereas now we're driving a lot more, so that's why these numbers for the vehicles have largely stayed static. You can go to the next slide. So the thing I really want to emphasize here is that this is really, due to town actions. I mean, 2/3 of our carbon footprint reduction, these 800 tons, really has been due to resident actions. And I think this is a really big deal. And in part, this is, I think, because of the incentive program that we put together. A lot of people have put in applications for that, but there have been a lot of people that haven't done the incentive program that have also really contributed towards this reduction. But when we look at the targets that a lot of the international organizations set, we should be aiming maybe for about 62% by 2030. So we still have a long ways to go. If you go to the next slide, this should be my last one. So what are things that you can do? If you really want to help with this problem, probably the biggest single thing you can do is switch to renewable electricity. If you look here, this is sort of our baseline electricity usage, but for many people this also contributes to their heating and cooling footprint, especially if they have heat pumps. For those of you with EVs, again, switching to renewable electricity, that's going to reduce the vehicle emissions here as well. If you switch to heat pumps and EVs, these things also help. One of the surprising ones, eat veggies, right? More natural food, eat less meat. This is a really hard one for us to deal with because obviously we've all got to eat, but the more sort of natural foods we eat, the more we move away from meat. That tends to reduce this part of our footprint. And last, just come talk to us. We're always happy to help you find strategies to mitigate some of these things. So.
Thanks, Paul. As I said, the renewable energy incentive program's coming up for continuation in June. And they're proposing some changes which are, at first glance, more complex than I wanted to read before this meeting. But the council will be paying attention to those coming up, and you can too, to whatever degree you wish. Right. All right. So we are now finally reaching another aspect of the required business at this town meeting, and that is the town budget. You hopefully have had a chance to look at the budget that's been proposed by the council and myself. I'd like a motion to approve the budget and tax rates, and then I'll go into a review of some significant parts of that, and we'll have questions. So can I have a motion to approve? Georgette has moved. Second? Okay, thank you. All right. So once again, these are just my excerpts from the actual document, which you may have picked up here. So the property tax revenues are slated at the constant yield tax rate. So there's virtually no change in the revenue from this source. It's not to say that our property tax bills aren't going up, because they are, because our homes are more valuable, unfortunately. The dwelling tax revenue will be unchanged because our contract continues at the same rate. And that's not working, actually. All right. So all other revenue sources, income tax is estimated to be about 15% higher, well above inflation. Yeah, yay yay taxpayers here in town. Highway user revenues will be up 6%, estimated from the state. The county down tax duplication funds, which the county dispenses to municipalities to make up for services that the municipalities provide, but for which the county nevertheless collects taxes. So we get tax duplication funds from that. Then the next slide. Other facts involving revenue are use of reserves, which is the excess or under generation from between income and expenses. It comes from reserves. That's estimated to be, and it's estimated because it's a budget, and we haven't finished 26, so our numbers for 26 are not final. We'll be down 25%. 81,000. This is relatively meaningless since we rarely ever expend the funds that are slated to come out of reserves to balance the budget. I put in a couple of other things. The expenses in the budget for fiscal 27 coming up versus 26, not much of a change in what we plan to spend. The expenses of the actual, this is the budgeted, that was budget. So our plan last year, the plan this year doesn't propose to spend any more money. Actually, we will have spent this year, and this is an estimate because we haven't finished the year, 28% less than we budgeted. Not an untypical situation for the town. We budget conservatively and ambitiously, and nothing gets done in this town except one of us takes a lot of what gets done in this town. We, the residents, have to make happen, and that takes effort, like the stormwater management project. So we don't spend it all in any given year. Next slide, then. Let's turn to the expenses of note. Well, we pay some salaries. We pay part-time salaries. And the cost of living increase was 2.4% based on the Department of Labor numbers. Landscaping and facility services will be the same. The contract continued at roughly the same number. As well as the contingent budget we put in to take care of everything that's not in the contract that needs to be done. Refuse and recycling, no change. The contract calls for the same expense. Leaf collection, also no change. Renewable energy incentive program actually is budgeted at less funds, mostly because we didn't expend the amount budgeted for the current year, and it doesn't look like we will. So that's down 10,000. Next. Okay, the McCatherine Hall maintenance, $50,000. That's no change from the current budget. That was the money we had planned to spend on the hall when we didn't have any emergencies, which includes painting the windows, likely new locks, the floor being, we sand and restore the floor. So we have $50,000 for that. Road work has $80,000 in it, which is more than most years. And the reason is because this year we chose not to do road work. We only spent $10,000 of the $50,000 in the budget. Three of us looked at our roads, and there just weren't enough areas that looked like they needed repaving prioritized. So the thought is, so we put 80,000 into next year, that by this fall or next spring, that will be more apparent as to where road work should continue. Tree removal up 25%. We all know why that is, unfortunately. Playground equipment, that's a grant, but there's 250,000 in the budget. So if everybody can get their act together and we can make decisions, we could spend the entire grant next year. Not likely, but it's in the budget. Playground refurbishing, that's an additional, that's just maintenance and ordinary stuff, which is down 10,000 because part of the 20 will be shifted around, so it's only 10,000. Tennis court maintenance. That I explained to you earlier. The large cracks in the tennis court have become difficult, and if I'm not mistaken, the next slide may show. Okay, this shows one of the a large one. It's interferes with play. It's not quite dangerous physically to tripping. It's not a big sticking up, but it's clearly a problem. Next slide. I've got 4 of these. There's another one here, also quite large and significant. That one is not so big, but getting bigger. And the last one shows some small ones that are also present. Bottom line is the tennis court is suffering some age-related issues with the surface. So we need to, our options are to redo the surface, which would be a more significant job on the major cracks. On the smaller cracks, it would just be putting stuff over those cracks. They'll be back, just not a question as to when. All right, next slide. Keeping on with expenses, the town administrator, which formerly was the clerk, is budgeted significantly higher because we have increased the responsibilities, 1. 2, it's going to be a full-time job. Kathy worked 70, about whatever it was, 80% time, something like that. So this one's going to be full-time. So that runs it up. And with the associated benefits, costs more. Town attorney, that's up 8,000. Why is that? Well, when we actually aren't spending our budget on the town attorney, but the issue that came up over summer in the parks that we had overlooked, we being an awful lot of people over an awful lot of years, that that program is required to be permitted. And we just never actually took a close look at what we were required to do to run a camp. So we don't want that to happen, and we hope it's not happening anywhere else. But municipalities are required to meet all kinds of regulations and goals and stuff. So we're going to have to change our way of doing things, and part of that will involve the town attorney. So we budgeted higher, so she's going to spend more time looking over our shoulder at some of the things we do. Website modernization is down because we don't think we're going to be doing a lot of that in the coming year. Maintenance, however, is up. Meaning keep it up the way, working up to par. The ADA compliance I mentioned earlier is a new item which we need to expend. May not get spent all in the coming year since our required deadline has been moved, just recently was moved to 2028. And diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging education is slightly down in the coming budget. Next slide. Okay, that's all I have to say about the budget. It's now time for any questions prior to a vote. Bill.
didn't see the resurfacing of the basketball court.
It's in there. It is, sorry, I should have called it out specifically. Yes, that's in the budget. The question was, what about the basketball court resurfacing them, which I mentioned earlier? No, there is funds have been budgeted for that, $30,000 or up to $30,000 to do that. It's arguable as to whether or not we would tap the state playground grant, the basketball court being really part of the playground. That would have no effect on the, unless we were spending the whole playground grant on the playground facilities that we are in the master plan, comprehensive plan. It wouldn't have any effect on the funds there, because the town certainly will carry through in subsequent years with funds beyond the state grant to accomplish our goals there. So yes, there's 30,000. Any other questions? Okay, well, great. So that means we'll move to a vote on approval of the budget and the tax rates for fiscal 2027. We're going to do that by just raising your hands. All in favor? Aye. Online, I can take a look and see if we got you guys online. I see lots of hands. Great. Okay, good. And I won't call for opposed. They're a vast minority compared. So the budget is passed and approved. Thank you very much. Good. As you know, the council will have a public hearing and then be voting on an ordinance that adopts the tax rate and the budget on May 18th. We are required to do that by state law. They don't recognize the town meeting as being determinative, although here in town it is determinative, and that's what goes into this pro forma ordinance that we will be working. All right, next item is a report from Bob's Historic Preservation Commission report.
This year we've been working really closely with the Planning Commission on actually three different issues. And I think that Georgette will probably go into these. The commercial corner, the renovation of the commercial corner, the subdivision on Lower Ridge that is about to be approved, and also a proposed waiver that is in the works that would allow people to apply when they have conditions that do not match the existing zoning, i.e. the setback, mostly a setback question. As you probably know, the actual zoning map came about far after the houses were built in town. So that application of the zoning, both the map and the setbacks, in many cases are a little funky compared to what the houses are and what the houses can do. So this is something that we've been working at together to actually provide a vehicle for people to do projects that actually make a lot of sense, but are strictly prohibited by our what they call Euclidean zoning. So those are three things that we've been working really closely with the Planning Commission on. Within the HPC, we've been doing two sign projects. One is that I've talked about before is commemorative signs for the buildings that were lost, which we highlighted during the 150th celebration. And those signs were working very closely with Phil Winter, who is sort of has more knowledge about the Grove than just about anybody, both knowledge and images. And we're working very closely with him to make those signs, and we're getting prices too to see what that's going to cost. And that'll be rolled out gradually. It won't be just all of a sudden there'll be signs all over everything. The other one is there's been a request from people to be able to put signs on their houses, like in Rockville and other historic districts, that say that this is a contributing resource to the historic district, and we're working on a little program to do that. What else? We're continue to do work on the design guidelines, because, as you know, we updated the historic district to include houses all the way up to 1969, and so there's houses that are not really the old Gothic cottages that included more than that. Even houses that are what the 60s ranch houses are now included as contributing structures of the historic district. So we're developing the guidelines to provide the reviews properly to relate to those properties. We also, the archive, we have a situation. Pat, our archivist, has had some physical problems, some health problems over the last couple of years, and has diminished in her capacity and her ability to do the work that she had been doing. And most of the work that she had been doing is related to the records management requirements of the town, but most of the stuff that she's been doing has been related mostly to the camp meeting records, which are the records that before the town was actually a municipality. And there's a special collection at the State Archive that is receiving a lot of the records from the town back 150 years. So we've been transferring those gradually, and Pat will close that out. But we're also looking at getting some additional help to look at the records of the town from 1937 until the present, because those records have to indeed be transferred to the town archives, or to the state archives as well. One final project is there. You may or may not know about what we've been terming the quarry, which is in the between the upper and lower fields and the tree line. There's some pits that were discovered in those areas, as well as some springs, and they were actually designated to be a historic archaeological resource, and it's registered with the state. Recently, Wendy Harris, who's our archaeologist, enlisted Caleb Fassett, Mimi Bulletin's son, who's a geologist, and he looked at it and said, I'm not so sure. And he brought out a half a dozen of his PhD compatriots to take a look at it, and they said, no, this is a natural phenomenon. So unfortunately, we do not have an archaeological treasure on our borders. So that brings me. We've also been getting some pressure to join the 250th celebration, but since we just did 150, I think we're going to stay out of that. So the final thing is that every year we make an award to a project that has exceptional value and provides exceptional value to the community. And this year it's not one of the contributing resources. It's a house that was built in 1977, 1975-ish as a ranch house, and is over on Ridge Road, and it is by Terry and Marita. And this is the result of their efforts. There is a before slide here. This is the before. This is the view from Cherry Avenue, and with Marita smiling. And there's a during, and then there's a final. And there you go. So it's quite a project. From the other side of the house, we have a before and an after. And now the house now relates much better to the site. It opens up to the landscaping and invites very landscaping into the house. And it's a great modest. It's a modest modification to a modest house, and is entirely in keeping with the whole spirit of Washington Grove. After Marita, here she is. One more slide. I'm sorry. Oh, yes. And if you are interested in the details of the project, Marita and Terry have put together a book and would be pleased to, called Nesting, pleased to share it with you when you come over to take a look at the project. And the little birdhouse, of course, is very apropos. It is the same matching colors as the house. So here you go. So what the certificate says is for the renovation of and addition to a 1977 ranch house that preserves its modest scale while modernizing its relation to its site. The house now freely opens the living areas to the yard with ample windows and well-proportioned additions.
Really quickly, I want to call out that Terry did most of the design for this house. We had an architect, but he just did what he was told. And it was quite a project. We also did all of our own permitting, and that included getting an enormous amount of help from Georgette, who put up with about 10 phone calls, and including a visit to our house where she talked me off the ledge with a glass of wine, I think. And the Historic Preservation Committee made a recommendation that we change the roof line of the entryway, and I'm not sure exactly what their wording was, but it was sort of to the effect of that it looked a bit like a strip mall. And that was an invaluable piece of advice, so I really recommend anybody who goes through the Historic Preservation Committee on an addition, consider it a great help. So, thank you.
I do want to point out that the inspiration for their work on their house was our house right next door. And we won the award, I don't know, some many years ago, 2012 maybe. Okay, so next we have the Planning Commission report, which Georgette will deliver.
So I would like very much to say thank you to the members of the Planning Commission. My thanks to the members of the Planning Commission. All of them are hard workers. Sylvie Fabre finished her term this year and is retiring, and Bill Earl has been now moved from being an alternate to being a full member of the Planning Commission. His work is really excellent. It's been particularly helpful in that Planning Commission is doing a lot more work now with the HPC. And having Bill, who is a member of both, has been superb for communication. And he is really on top of things, too. So that's great also. We will be getting a new Planning Commission alternate when the Town Council appoints one at the end of this month. Next slide, please. Okay, these are just permits for the past year. I'm not going to go into any details. They're all in my report, which is in the packet that everybody has picked up. Next slide, please. These are just notable projects. The ordinance was for the commercial corner. That's not going to be incredibly exciting until the owner decides to go ahead with renovations, and we get both renovations and new uses there. So that's more excitement to come. The subdivision on 330 Ridge, that was where the Lottis family was, and it's being subdivided into 2 buildable lots. This has actually taken longer than I could have imagined, but we just this past week approved the forest conservation plan and have a tentative approval of the subdivision plan. So we're waiting for them to come back to us with the formal plat and to show that it's been entered into Montgomery County records. So looking at the slide, yes, two of the important things was we chivied them and got some extra trees to go in on the lot. And the houses, the builder is actually working quite closely with HPC. And as a result, the houses that are going in are genuinely modest in scale and are going to have more features on all four sides of the house, which is a real plus. They don't look like your normal subdivision cookie cutters. And the preservation waiver has been one of the more interesting things that we've been working on. If I could have the next slide, please. Okay, this statement, which I'd actually like to read. The purpose is to allow renovations that afford modern amenities and updates to the structure which will make the house more livable and thus more likely to be preserved while still retaining a modest scale as prescribed in the HPC design guidelines. And this statement is actually courtesy of David Stopak. David and I have been working on, he works on one set of paperwork and I work on another, and that's been very productive too. So we're just hoping, and this sounds a little pie in the sky, so I decided to do one example. Could I have the next slide, please? Okay. This is one of the houses on Washington Grove Lane. This is a very modest example, but this is something that actually happened. The owner did several renovations to the property, but one of the things that he wanted to do was to add a porch on the front of the house. And his problem was that the house, the side setback on the Washington Grove Lane properties, it's 10 feet on each side, and a lot of the houses don't meet that setback, often because they were shifted either to one side or the other of the property when they were originally built. In his case, he is 6 feet, 6.43 feet from the side property line. So also only 23 feet from the front property line. Now, he had already allowed for the porch, if we could go to the next slide, please. He had allowed for the porch to only be 8 feet deep so that he would not exceed 10 feet past his setback line, which is what's required for an open porch. But he wanted to have the porch extend all the way across the house because that's what he thought would look good. And the Planning Commission literally couldn't approve that because the ordinance says that we cannot allow an increase in the degree of nonconformance. So we couldn't let him build that porch without taking off about 4.5 feet off the end of the porch. And in the end, he decided that we actually thought, well, maybe he could take 4.5 feet off of each end of the porch. And he said, no, I'll just not do that. But it would be possible, if this historic preservation waiver passes, for him to take the project to the HPC, explain what it is that he's trying to do, and have them assess it with a look at their design guidelines. If the modification meets the criteria of the design guidelines and makes the house more attractive and livable, they can recommend to the Planning Commission that we go ahead and approve it, even though it does not strictly meet the Euclidean ordinance for that particular property. So we think that this has a lot of potential, and it's one of the actually more interesting things that we've been working on this year. Thank you.
Okay, so as you can see, things keep moving along. the town continues to grapple with our unique characteristics and, the modern needs. And I think, based on what you've just heard from Bob and Georgette, we're doing very well at attempting to find accommodations that will balance our intent to keep the town looking historic and not out of scale and all those sorts of things, and at the same time so people can improve the livability of their house and, in this case of this porch example, the actual appearance, external appearance, which many people would say would be desirable, and the rules simply were getting in the way in this case. Anyway, okay, we have one more presentation prior to the council reports. Patty's going to tell us about the springs in the West Woods.
I just want to give you a little quick review historically as well, to just talk about both the Whetstone Spring and also the most recent renovation of Maple Spring. And so just giving you kind of a point of perspective is, what is a spring? We talk about a spring as a natural exit point at which the groundwater emerges from the aquifer below, and then it becomes surface water. And springs have long been important, obviously, for humans writ large, but particularly here in our area of Montgomery County, now known as Montgomery County, but basically as a source of fresh water. Years ago in this area where we had a lot of livestock and farming, it was also used to go and have water, fresh water for your cattle, for your livestock, as well as hopefully potable water for people to drink. So this is an example back in 1897 of someone who would really just go to one of those spring sites and access some fresh water. Next slide, please. And again, another piece of sort of interesting local history, looking at this area as well. I mean, this goes back into the days of colonialization and even before the American Revolution, when they had things like the French and Indian Wars. Even General Braddock at that time, this was a particularly popular corridor, just looking at this area in general, not only for farmland, obviously the natural springs in the area, but it was also just a north-south route for people, in this case, military, that were going between this area known as Maryland and into Pennsylvania, that Braddock supposedly traveled up around 355, now known as Route 355, on his way to Fort Duquesne during the French and Indian Wars. There's also a legend, I don't know if it's true or not, that George Washington, in that same period of time, sharpened his sword on what we know as Whetstone Spring, on the capstone. That's at least information, sort of lore or mythology that I know that Joan handed down to me some years ago. It's been kind of talked about in the town. And again, as George Washington was on his way to meet Braddock up in Fort Duquesne, which is actually known now as Pittsburgh. Next slide. So let's talk about first Whetstone Spring. When Joan and I became the co-chairs of the Woods Committee, it was around 2015 or 16, and we sort of stepped into those roles. One of the things we wanted to understand is, what had been done in the past, and also just what our woods looked like. And I was really appreciative not only of Joan, but of Jolie McCatherine, the McCatherine family in general, that, obviously grew up in this town and knew a lot of the woods as children, right? They would go out and recreate in the woods and enjoy the natural springs as well. So when we started to actually venture into the East Woods and the West Woods, things were not in really good condition. And that was our first rude awakening, is things had been sort of benign neglect, frankly. I mean, it was, still a beautiful place to walk and respite through, but there was a lot of non-native invasive plants and also a lot of degradation that had just gone unattended. So when we started looking for, you'd heard there's these springs in the woods, and between Jolie and Joan and some others, we found what was then Whetstone Spring. This is a picture in 1961 that I think was actually taken by Jim McCatherine, Ken, when they were teenagers, and they had actually probably cleaned up the site. They, the boys, the girls, whatever, they would go out and hang out at the springs. And so they had taken this photo. You can see the capstone at the top of the picture, and then a little bit of water in the center and some, sort of rocks around it. So just keep that in mind. Next slide. But this is what we found when around 2016, 17, when we were just sort of doing our little sojourn into the woods to see what we could see, and this, I didn't even know this was there. I mean, you couldn't even tell this was a spring. Had it not been at the time for Jolie and Joan, they said, oh, no, this is the site. They remembered the location, and it's just totally degraded. You sort of see a little bit of a trickle of stream in the middle of the photo, but everything else around it is just overgrown. There's a lot of non-native invasive plants. There are some native ones too, but the stream banks are completely eroded. So that's where we start around 2016 or so, when we first got our first good look at where Whetstone Spring, or what remained of it, looked like. There's no capstone there either. There's a story somehow about some kids that came along, and I don't know how they lifted up the old capstone, but supposedly they stole it. I don't know if that's true or not, but there was nothing left of that original 1961 picture. So that's where we're starting. So next slide, please. So around 2023, so, the Woods Committee, we talked about getting some budget together, and also obviously figuring out a plan to restore Whetstone. The Woods Committee originally went out there. We did a lot of the sort of easy lifting and cutting and opening up the area just to kind of see what was there. We had to get rid of a lot of that overgrowth. And then when we finally opened it enough, we got then, fortunately, Jim Quinn and his crew and RJ Landscaping had now become part of our town landscaping contract, and we asked him, and Steve as well, we always ask Steve, we asked them to come out and take a look at the site and to see what they could envision, and we realized there's eroded stream banks. We found, of course, the sort of main part of the spring itself. You see now in the rear of that photograph, there's a flat stone. That was a new capstone that we purchased. We figured out the right size. And as we were working on clearing out all of that debris and freshening up the stream beds and reinforcing the stream banks, we actually found off to the left of that photo a smaller secondary spring that was right in the same area. So we included that in our restoration project. So that's basically Jim in the photograph and one of his crew members literally getting in there and just trying to clean up and taking a lot of that sediment that's in the spring and moving it back up to the banks. Next slide. And this is actually what was the outcome of all of that. So this was now in 2023, just to put a timestamp on it. You can see the new capstone. You can see where we've now taken rocks and rimmed and reinforced the stream banks. Off to the left of the picture, the upper left corner, is, if you follow the rocks around that way, that's where the little secondary spring site is. So we just encapsulated it and included it. And then you'll see some of those little stepping stones in the front of the photograph. The other thing we did is we planted at that time some native plants, some ferns we transplanted from the area, and also some viburnum to just bring in some more greenery and help to reestablish the area that had been used for construction and renovation. So that's looking at the restored area of Whetstone 2023. Next slide. And this is another view. If you're back up on, to put it in perspective, I should have put a map here. Whetstone Spring is as you come in the West Woods across Whetstone Trail and you're heading towards Kelly Park. This is just before you get to the Kelly Park exit. If you stay on Whetstone from the lake parking lot and you just follow Whetstone Trail, the sort of direct trail all the way across, and just before you get to Kelly Park, you'll come off on a little side trail. And this is just as you're coming around that last corner and you're looking down at the spring that's restored. The capstone would be off to your left. And then the rest of that was just reinforcing the stream banks. That stream actually continues, and sadly, we're not quite sure where it actually goes, because when Kelly Park was developed back in the 90s, they have those ball fields there, and the stream continues, and then it sort of goes under the ball field. I have no clue as to how they managed to redirect water flow, but eventually that stream should empty out heading towards Montgomery Village and the big ponds that are out there. So the stream continues to function and it continues to flow, but somehow it's been tunneled underneath the ball field. Okay. Next slide, if you can, please. There you go. So the reason that we also worked on Whetstone initially was because, as you know, we had our 150th anniversary in August of 2023, and thanks actually to Jim and his crew, everybody working really hard, we actually got it done just in time for that 150th anniversary celebration. It was restored. We had a plaque that's put in there. You can't see it on these photos, but as you enter those little stepping stones, there is a little memorial plaque or dedication plaque that identifies that as restored in 2023. Again, Joan was just over the moon. She was so thrilled to see everything replaced, and there's that new capstone you see in both of those pictures. So it's continued to look really well. We continue to go over there and make sure that, there's some debris, some leaves that fall in, and you have to sort of get rid of some of the sediment, that floats in the water, but nobody's vandalized it. And that was the one thing I was worried about. They have that new elementary school that they built, plus they have the Kelly Park ball fields. It's very visible. If you're coming in from the Kelly Park side, we assume that, kids being kids, and there might be some vandalism. Honestly, we don't see trash there. We don't see any real vandalism. I think people consider it, frankly, a spiritual place, and that's what I do. I mean, when you go there, you just are in this serene moment, so I really invite you to please take time and go and see it. Okay, next slide. So with that in mind, as I mentioned, we also found the old maple spring back in like 2016 or so. Again, thanks to Joan and Jolie and those who had grown up in the town who remembered, and actually where's Jean in here? Jean, well, there you are. Some of the historic families, and that's why I want to defer to Jean and also thank, the courtesy of that, I think, is some of her relatives, the Walker family, from back around 1900. So in the case of Maple Spring, that also was what that looked like when it was still farmland, and people would, go there and sit and recreate or chat or enjoy the spring. I don't remember who built those cement ledges of the day, but it was really very different than Whetstone. Whetstone was very natural. This one really had cement ledges constructed. You can see where the young ladies are sitting there and enjoying a nice, spring afternoon. It's really hard to understand what's going on in the background because now we have Maple Lake over there. We have all the housing development called Newport Estates. It's totally, re-envisioned since it was, more than 100, almost 200 years ago. So next slide, please. So back in around 2016, 17, et cetera, around that same time, we found what was left of Maple Spring. And you can see how deteriorated everything was. The cement ledges were just crumbling. They were broken apart. A section in the front, it used to be, all four sides. Well, suddenly that was all broken down. And again, the first slide on the left is showing those of us standing there. That's actually, I think, Steve and Jim, me, and I think that's you, Dave, sitting in that picture too. So we were there trying to figure out what to do with this because it was so demolished. And this area of Maple Spring is just south of Maple Lake. You have to remember that originally Maple Lake has changed over many years. This was the original spring source of water for Maple Lake. Okay, it was originally maybe Maple Pond, okay? So this is still a source of water flow into Maple Lake from the south end. The other picture on the lower right-hand corner is actually looking downstream. If you're standing at Maple Spring and you're looking downstream, and towards the very back of that picture is actually the back fence line of Maple Lake. Okay. What I'm looking at here, though, is how eroded the stream banks are on the right-hand side. Again, a lot of overgrowth, a lot of non-native invasives, and it's really just a mess. It looks more like a swamp than it does a stream or even a spring. Next slide. And so we started, after we got done with Whetstone Spring, we immediately turned our attention to this one. This is going to be a much more complicated restoration project. And again, looking at our annual budget, we cleared out the land, and thanks again mostly to Steve and to Jim, to clear out a lot of that overgrowth just so, again, get our eyes on what we were dealing with. And that's what it would look like. Again, it was just so demolished and just so degraded, the spring and the ledges, and then again you can kind of trail off to see what's left of the stream in the background of the slide. Next slide, please. So we came up with a plan for Maple Spring. We wanted to start doing it actually last year. We got our fiscal year money. We wanted to obviously clear the vegetation, as I showed you in the previous slide. We knew that we had masonry work to do, which was very different than whetstone. Whetstone was a lot of rocks, right? But this was going to require some masonry. And I will tell you that between Jim and Steve, they are absolutely just totally wonderful artists and skilled envisioners of what they could do to actually restore those ledges. And I'll show you what that looks like in the aftermath. Also, credit to John Porter. You're in this room somewhere. He's hiding. We asked him to do a rendition of what the spring would look like. So we started out with that rotten-looking picture, and we wanted to see what it would look like once we're done. So we went through our checklist of masonry work and actually creating a little channel out of the spring, a little outflow duct, so that the water inside the spring would be able to channel in a little stream. We had to also restore, again, the stream banks because they were just flattened by all the years of erosion. And we intended, of course, like in Whetstone, to put a dedication plaque at the end. Okay? And so, next slide. And this is what it looks like. We just finished in April of this year. Sadly, Joan had passed away as we got sort of our feet off the ground to start working on this. So I'm sorry that she wasn't here to see the final outcome because she was so actually dedicated and committed to seeing this through. So she passed away, of course, in April of last year, but we were starting now last fall and then finishing now into the spring. And this is looking at one edge, like this corner that I'm standing at would be looking at the completion of the spring. You see how the cement ledges are completely restored. They rebuilt them. Thank you, Steve and Jim. And then we even have a little bit of outside flat tiles finishing the outer edges. And you see all of that riprap that is restoring and preventing further erosion from the stream banks all the way down, and in the very back of the picture would be the back fence of Maple Lake. You may not be able to appreciate as much, but if you look towards the back of that photo off to the left where the stream bank is, and you actually have to see it for yourself, there is so much skunk cabbage that is just emerging in there. It's always been there in the past, but it's been kind of smothered by a lot of the non-native invasive plants, and we've taken some of those out. We have more work to do, but a lot of that skunk cabbage is filling in, and it's actually a few of those are just popping up right by the spring itself. It's just gorgeous. So the dedication plaque, as you can see in the corner of the picture, and I gave you a highlight of it, magnification, is to dedicate Maple Spring to being restored. We started the work in 2025 in November, hoping we would get it done at the end of last calendar year, but then we had snowcrete and we had everything else, Arctic weather, that really delayed a lot of the work that we could have finished, and so we finished it off this spring, and we also have it dedicated in memory of Joan. Next slide. One last thing, just to remind you about going into the woods and having forest bathing experiences, and I believe they call it shirin-yoku, right, in Japanese. So this is truly sort of a science-based understanding that people who go and spend time in the woods truly feel better. That's the short version, right? You actually strengthen your immune system, you can reduce your blood pressure, you're just in a moment of zen, if I want to sort of encapsulate it, and really just take time to sit. And that's why these two springs are really beautiful. Just places you can go. You can just stand there and feel like you're in a green cathedral of forest. In the case of Maple Spring, you can actually sit there on the cement ledges. That's what it's there for. And just take a few minutes to go and enjoy. Now, right now, we do have an old trail that'll get you to Maple Spring. We're going to have to do some more work on it. The trail has some, risky spots in it where there's a little bit of water damage and sort of flooding areas, so we're going to try to work on that a little bit better. So it's not as easy to get to as Whetstone, but when you come off the lake parking lot, you'll be on the parking lot side. You'll have to take a sort of straight line, and then you still have to cross over what ultimately becomes the now known as trench, but where it's more shallow, you have to cross over that section and then continue on and head back towards Newport Estates or Family Services. That's one way to get there. The other way is you could kind of go around the backside of the lake by Newport Estates and sort of come in the back way. But talk to me if you want to get an idea of how to get there easily. But when you get a chance, please go and see. Okay, next slide, please. And I do want to acknowledge, again, Jim and his team at RJ Landscaping. Thank you, Steve, always. John Porter, thank you for the rendition. There you are. I also want to acknowledge the Women's Club of Washington Grove and the McCatherine family. They donated some funding to help us with that memorial plaque, and I wanted to acknowledge them for their kind donation. Obviously, the Woods Committee members, and thank you, John, Mayor, and Council, for all your support to help us get both of these restored. Thank you.
Yep, thank you, Patty. This sort of a project goes beyond just trying to maintain the woods and worry about stream runoff and what have you. This is adding to the restoring, but also adding to the character of the town. And that's a big volunteer effort. Patty and Joan spearheaded this, and organizing these things just takes commitment. And there are plenty of opportunities around town for everyone to reproduce this sort of thing. Okay, so we're reached the point about the town council reports, which were distributed. Also available online. Before we start the town council reports, for which all the councilors put in a review of the year in their responsibility areas, maybe looked ahead to what they're looking at, what those committees and areas look like in the coming year. Rob Gilmore, who is a retiring town councilor. I will get to you, but he didn't get the report on the lighting committee in time. He wanted to say a few.
Yeah, I did. Thanks. Yeah. Just because of some work commitments, was remiss in submitting the written reports. But John touched on what the lighting committee has done the past year. I just wanted to elaborate briefly. And it's rather rare. It's led by Virginia Quesada and Robert Johnson. There are several other people, Patty, Bob, Charlie, and others. It's a rare committee that, its charge is really to save the town money. Most of our committees are spending town money, and that's fine. That's what we want. We appropriate that. But they are, I guess, looking to spend a little bit of money in repurchasing the lights to save what could be tens or probably even hundreds of thousands of dollars over the long term. And it's part of a trend that has started nationwide with municipalities looking to purchase street lights from the local utilities, which are often, as we know, certainly this is the case with Pepco, are kind of sclerotic, non-responsive entities. And so the thought is that local municipalities that exercise self-governance can do a better job with managing their streetlights and preserving, particularly important for this town, preserving the historical nature. So, and this past year, another thing that I think has distinguished the lighting committee is probably more than almost any committee that I can think of in my tenure. I've done a couple stints now. They've really been involved in an adversarial circumstance, because Pepco, as John alluded to in his brief comments during his report, has been not particularly helpful. They have not only dragged their feet, but they've raised obstacles, and the biggest one has been this kind of pretextual trying to foist on municipalities. Washington Grove is a group of a number of municipalities in Montgomery County that's all trying to accomplish this. So they've tried to foist on the towns that have been doing this, a requirement to pay for a disconnect switch money, which they claim may be needed either for safety or for kind of liability purposes to protect themselves. And it would cost almost by 5 times the amount of purchasing the lights themselves. So working with Sue Ellen and the other municipalities that are part of this proceeding in front of the Public Service Commission, the committee, again led by Virginia and Bob, have been very active in fighting for the town's interests. And so I wanted that to be acknowledged. Sorry, it wasn't in the written report, but I thought it was important to highlight that. And it does look like it's coming to fruition. I think that this next year, we do expect, hopefully, to reach a final agreement that gets presented to the town to vote and approve that purchase. Thanks.
Okay, well, there's a lot more in those town council reports. Does anyone want to ask any questions concerning the reports? Okay, well, I can make another pitch. You know, the formalities of presenting ideas or questioning what's going on, anything any resident cares to look into or raise, no one should hesitate to talk to one of the counselors, talk to me, talk to Kathy for another month and a half. Nothing should be held off. We're not the big bureaucracy. You don't have to file a Freedom of Information request just to find out why the tree next to your house wasn't dealt with or something like that. Okay, well, if there are no comments, let me go back because we're reaching the end. To comment, Rob has finished his 3 years on the town council. He's been a voice of I'm trying to figure out what the right word is. Prudence is the right word. Being a lawyer, we have a few of those in town, which is often a good thing, sometimes not. But in prudence in how we approach certain activities. So Rob's been great, and he's going off. A round of applause for Rob, please. All right, new business. Any new business? We want to add to the long list of things going on? Okay, if not, we're on to election results. If someone is here from the Board of Supervisors of Elections, Margot?
Okay, I first wanted to say thank you to everybody who's willing to serve in one of these elected positions, and to thank everybody else who came out to vote for them. So the results of this year's election, there were 74 ballots cast. For mayor, there were 54 votes for John Compton, and there were many write-ins. Allie Gillanders got 3. Liz Gillanders got 4. Nola, who I might mention is a dog and is deceased, got 1 vote. Eva Patron got 1 vote. Tom Land, 3 votes. Jane Klinger, 1 vote. Paris Chris Pacquione, 1 vote. Snug Vote, 1 vote. And Other, 1 vote. For council positions, Peter Nagrod got 69 votes, and Nick Patron got 62 votes, and there were many write-ins. Christine Dibble got 1 write-in, Deb Tarasevich, Steve Wirtz, Kathy Carey Fletcher, Paris Chris Pacquion, and the New York Times.
Okay, so some of us will be back for another year, and we're at the end of the agenda. The Kathy was unlikely to agree to a separate acknowledgement event, but if anybody wants to override her on that, we can certainly do that. That was my original thought, but other than that, thank you all for turning out. Bob, go for it.
I seem to recall that Jim Fletcher at the town meeting was out and said, this is the payment to the mayor for a year of well done.
That's right. All right. In that case, there being nobody else to clap for, then we'll call the town meeting for 2026